6 and chapter 5, 6 and 5. And like I said, we really need to look at our audience before we pick a topic. I mean, we can pick a topic and then look at the audience, but chances are we might have to change that topic or really do some work on that topic after we've analyzed the audience. So it helps us to either pick a topic that's appropriate or to further narrow or define the topic after we've done the audience analysis. So we're going to look at chapter 6 first. So what do you think audience analysis is? What are we doing when we're doing audience analysis?
Looking at the audience.
Okay.
Seeing what we should talk about, or
okay, what kinds of things might we be? Okay, we might be looking at age. What else might we be looking at? Why are we looking at the audience? Gender. We can look, those are called demographics, and those are descriptors. And we're going to talk about two types of audience analysis today. One is demographic and the other is situational. If I can get my pointer to work. Let's see if it's just not. Whoops, I closed it. Let's open that back up. There we go. Okay. So one of the things we have to remember as we are doing our audience analysis and as we are building the speech is that we need to remain audience-centered. And what that means is we keep the audience first and foremost in our mind. We are doing this speech for the audience, and so we keep them in mind from the very beginning of the development process, which is the audience analysis, through selection of a topic, through the research of the speech, on through the presentation of the speech. So we want to remain audience-centered, keep the audience foremost in our minds, and remember that we're doing this for the audience. All right. So we start with these three questions to stay audience-centered. To whom am I speaking? Who's in the audience? What is their demographics? What kinds of people are they? Is it a general audience? Is it a very specific audience? What are we looking at in terms of who's going to be there? And then what is it that I want them to know when I'm finished with my speech? What do I want them to know? What do I want them to believe? What do I want them to do, maybe as a result of my persuasive speech? So we think about that question in terms of being audience-centered. And the next question is what is the most effective way to deliver that message, to deliver what I want them to know? Because this is the message. What I want them to know, do, or believe is the message. And then what's the most effective way of delivering that message, of getting that message to the audience? And how do we accomplish that goal? Okay, so we kind of ask these three questions in the beginning of our audience analysis. And by doing that, we start to identify the audience. We start to get to know them. We start to find out what their values are, what their goals are, what their experiences are, and if we have common ones, things that are in common with the audience. And we want to have things that are in common with the audience. And we establish what's called a bond, an identification bond with the audience. And if we become the listener, if we put ourselves in the seat, put ourselves in the audience, then we can certainly remain audience-centered that way. So that's what we want to do. We want to see it from the audience's perspective. So we become the listener. And that starts right away in audience analysis and topic selection. So I told you to remember the definition of ethnocentrism. What's ethnocentrism? What's the definition of ethnocentrism from chapter 1? Do you remember? Maggie?
Like believing that a certain group is better than another?
Yes, believing that your culture is the best, is better than anybody else. And we said we wanted to avoid ethnocentrism, right? We wanted to be careful that we did not participate in ethnocentrism. Well, here's this next definition I told you was coming. It's egocentrism, okay? Egocentrism, and we want to embrace egocentrism because this is the audience saying, what's in it for me? I may not be saying it verbally, but they're thinking it. Anytime you go anywhere and you sacrifice your time, you want to know what you're going to get out of it, right? Bless you. So if you want to know what you're going to get out of it, then the same holds true for other audiences. So an audience to a speech wants to know, what am I going to get out of being there? What am I going to learn? How is this appropriate to my life? How am I going to apply it to my life? And am I sacrificing my time for something worthwhile? So egocentrism is something we want to embrace. We want to remember that audiences are egocentristic. They want to know what's in it for them. Don't you want to know what's in it for you when you come to class? You want to get something out of it, right? Hopefully. So remembering what's in it for me, that's what the audience is asking, helps us to also stay audience-centered. So once we're audience-centered and we are thinking about the audience from the very beginning, we can start to do the analysis of the audience. There are two forms of analysis. One is demographic, one is situational. And just a couple minutes ago, you guys were naming off some things that have to do with demographics. Demographics are descriptors of people. They describe groups. They describe people. And so there are several descriptors. We said age. We said gender. Can you name some more? Color. Race. Ethnicity. What else? I'm sorry? Religion. Yeah. What else? Occupational, bless you. Occupational group, income levels, all of those kinds of things are descriptors of the audience. And so these are some of them that are in your textbook, and there are a lot more descriptors that we could use to get to know our audience. We might want to know educational levels. Why would we want to know educational levels?
So you don't speak above them.
Right, or below them.
Right.
Yeah. And what if they're disabled or something of that nature? We would want to be very careful in how we would approach that audience, right? We wouldn't want to talk about things that would offend. We want to try not to talk about things that will offend people. But we may end up offending someone because we're not going to make everybody happy all the time. But we start out with good intentions anyway of not wanting to offend people. So, but we need to know these things for some other reasons too. Why do you think we need to know age?
So you can speak on their level.
To speak on their level and to define and narrow the topic to what their interests are, depending on how old they are. If you say you're a financial consultant and you want to talk to the audience about retirement, are you going to give the same message to a group that's 25 years old as you would to a group that's 55 years old? No, because their interests in retirement are different. One is just barely even thinking about it. The other is getting close to being there. And so we would give we might have the same topic, but we would create two different messages depending on the type of audience that we have. And so we could do, a survey or a questionnaire to find out this information about our audience. We want to be careful about stereotyping, though, because we don't want to oversimplify the group. Just because there is members of the group doesn't mean that they are all alike, okay? Just because they are a member of a certain group, age group, religion, doesn't mean that every member is exactly alike. And so you want to keep that in mind as you are being audience-centered too. So avoid stereotyping. Okay, the other type of analysis is called situational analysis, and it has these components and a few more that we'll get to in just a minute. But what do you think we need to know about size?
How large the group is.
Okay, how big the group is, how many people are going to be there. What else about size would we want to know? How big the room is. Are we going to be with a lot of people in a little room that's going to make it somewhat uncomfortable? Are we going to be in a big venue, a big auditorium with few people? We need to know that so that we can prepare to be appropriate, whether it's in a big venue hall with 500 people or a small classroom with 5 people. We need to know the size of that. What about other types, other things about the physical setting? What do we need to know about the situation? What are some other things we need to know going in? I'm sorry, Dawn.
Hot, cold.
Yeah, if it's going to be hot or cold, if it's going to be temperature is going to be good. Are we going to be inside? Are we going to be outside? Is it hot or cold outside, or is it comfortable? What else might we want to know about the venue, the place? Are we going to have computers and projectors? Do we use PowerPoint, or do we use the board? Is there going to be a board? Do we have to use a microphone? What kind of a microphone? Is it one I have to hold, or is it going to be one that's pinned to me? All those kinds of things we need to know about the physical setting so that we can be prepared, especially in case something doesn't work. Say you get there and you've got this awesome PowerPoint, but they don't have a projector or a computer. You've got to be prepared to do without it. Okay, to do your speech without maybe some of your visual aids or your presentation software. What are some things we need to know about time?
How long?
How long what?
How long do you have to give your speech?
How long do you have to give your speech? Okay, do you have 5 minutes, or do you have a half an hour or an hour? And we want to make sure we fit that speech within that time limit, especially if we are among other people that are going to be speaking. We don't want to take anybody else's time from them or go over and then make the whole day go over, right? A domino effect, right? Okay, what else about time might we need to know, want to know?
Time of day.
Time of day we're speaking. What if we are the very first? It's going to be a seminar. It's going to be all day, and there's several speakers, but we're the first one at 8 o'clock in the morning. What are we going to have to do with our audience?
Wake them up.
We're going to have to wake them up. Probably need to be a little more interactive, probably real energetic, and gaining their attention and maintaining it. Okay, what if we are the last one on the agenda for the day?
Doesn't have to.
Still going to have to be,
wake them up.
They're going to be tired. You still don't have to be energetic, right? So it kind of depends on where we are in the agenda. So we need to know the agenda. We need to know if we're among other speakers, if we're the only speaker, what time we speak, all of those kinds of things. Are there competing sessions? Are there going to be people that come in for 30 minutes and hear the first 30 minutes of our presentation and go hear the last 30 minutes of somebody else's presentation if there's competing sessions going on? So we need to know all those kinds of things. Anything else you can think of that you might want to know about the speaking engagement, speaking place, or the audience demographically? Can you think of anything else? Well, there's lots of information that we need to know about their attitude. Okay, we need to know the audience's attitude about several things. And in your book, it's called disposition. It's the audience's attitude toward a number of things here. The first is their disposition or their attitude towards a potential topic that you're thinking of. If you're thinking of a topic, or maybe you've been asked to give a speech on a particular topic, and the topic's already been chosen, what does the audience know about that topic? What is their interest in that topic? Maybe you haven't picked a topic yet, and you need to find out what topics, plural, the audience might be interested in, and what their attitude is towards potential topics. So you may need to ask some questions based on this: interest, knowledge, and attitude about topics. The next one is disposition toward the speaker, toward you. What is their attitude toward and about you? Do they know you? What is their perception of you? Do you have a reputation that precedes you, and hopefully a good one that precedes you? And what is the level of credibility that the audience has in the speaker? What is credibility, by the way? Credibility. What do you think credibility is? We're going to talk a lot about credibility over the semester.
The credibility
Show
towards
up.
The speaker?
The credibility of the speaker.
The credibility.
Just to be there on time.
Okay, so their trustworthiness.
Right.
Okay, not only to be there on time and to deliver what they're supposed to, but to know what they're talking about. Credibility is knowing what you're talking about. And your audience will pick it off real quickly if you go in unprepared and you don't know what you're talking about. And then the audience's trust in you and your credibility goes down. And so you never want your credibility to go down. Hopefully you have really high credibility, you have a high, really good reputation, and that stays with you through the speech. Hopefully it actually goes up. And we'll talk more about credibility in coming chapters. But you want to be credible. You want to know what you're talking about. Okay. The next attitude we want to look at is toward the occasion or the disposition of the occasion. And we need to look at length and content. Why is this audience there? What is the occasion? Is it a business meeting where everybody is mandated to be there? They don't have a choice. If it is, there may be some grumpy folks around, right?
Yeah.
Mhm. So we want to know why they're there and what the content, what else is going on at this meeting, what else is going on in this situation. And we need to know the length of the occasion, the whole occasion. You know, is it a 1 hour business meeting or is it a day-long seminar, so that we can be appropriate in how we address the audience. You know, bigger, longer meetings are more formal than short, smaller meetings. So you want to know the length and the content of the occasion and why people are there. And this is a lot of information. And sometimes we need some help in gathering that information. And so there's a form, it's on Blackboard for you. It's called Audience Analysis Survey. And I found this on a website called Bridge of Hope. So Dr. Fabing, who would be the speaker. And this is a questionnaire that this person sends out when they have been invited to speak. And this is an audience analysis questionnaire. And you'll notice, you know, there's instructions there right at the beginning. And then, but right away, we're asking, what's the theme of your meeting, or what's the occasion? Why are we going to be there? And then we ask, are there any challenges faced? And then here you see we've got some demographic information that we're going to get using this questionnaire. Any other special guests? Are we the only ones on the agenda? How many people will be there? Why is the group attending this meeting? How will they be notified? What is their opinion of the meeting? He gets, and he or she, I'm not real sure which gender the doctor is, but the doctor gets into a little more specifics than what maybe the textbook talks about. And so, you know, we ask what they're trying to accomplish at the meeting. What are the objectives for the meeting? Other speakers that have been there. All these kinds of things help to, you know, let us figure out what we're doing with this audience, how, you know, what topic we pick, or what, you know, part of the topic we're going to use for this particular audience. And we even ask any topics that we should avoid, any topics that you want us to cover, all those kinds of things. So this is a bona fide, a real audience analysis survey that somebody uses when they've been asked to speak. So you can go out and you can spend more time looking at it on your own, but I wanted you to see what one looks like. Some people just use the demographics and just get demographics of the audience, but if you just stick to the demographics and you don't get the disposition information, you don't really know that audience very well, okay? So, I mean, you may know how old they are and what gender they are and, you know, what educational levels or income levels they are, but you don't really know if they're even interested in what you are thinking about talking about. So you really need to get that disposition information, and this is a real good way to get it. But how do you get this information? You got a great tool here, but how do you get this information? Where do you get this information? Any ideas?
Yes.
Okay, who do we ask?
The person that invited you to
Okay,
speak.
the person who invited us. These are called informants, okay? So we ask questions or we send the survey to the person that invited us. We could also send the survey or ask other members of the group. We could talk to speakers who have already been present at this group and done a presentation before. So we can ask different kinds of people from the audience all these kinds of different questions. Because everybody is short on time these days, we do a lot of things by email, and you could even send a questionnaire by email to the person who invited you and get information back. You wouldn't necessarily have to do that particular survey by surface mail, snail mail. So we use questionnaires. We can also do observations. How might we observe the audience?
Go into like their workplace and
Okay.
observe them work or
Yeah, we could
in
go into
their own atmosphere.
we could go into where they work and observe them while they're working. We could go to, if we're going to go to the Lions Club and give a presentation. Well, we could go to a couple of meetings before the one in which we are to present and get to know people. We could talk to other members. We could actually ask them, well, what topics are you interested in? Or I'm thinking of doing this topic. What do you think about that? You could actually talk to members of the group by going to some meetings before your actual meeting. So we can get all kinds of information. If we're going to use a survey, the textbook talks about 3 kinds of questions to use on your survey. And the one I showed you uses primarily 2. Uses fixed alternative and open-ended, but we can also use scale questions. Yes? What is a fixed alternative question? What does that mean? Fixed alternative. Any idea? Well, it means they only have choices that you give them. The alternatives for their answer are fixed. It's a yes, no, maybe, not sure, but they can only pick from the choices you've given them. Okay. A scale question is what?
Like a 1 or a 2 in between a scale of
Right.
0 to 10.
0 to 10 or 1 to 100 or something like that. A scale question might be something like this. Very seldom, very often, like, dislike. People might fall in the neutral zone in the middle. You might have numbers on here. You can put numbers on the scale. So that's a scale question. And then the last one is an open-ended question. And the survey that I showed you used a lot of open-ended questions. And that's one in which you just ask a question and leave space for a written answer or a verbal answer. Okay, if you're asking these questions verbally of your inviter. Okay, so you would just use an open-ended question. You wouldn't be putting words in their mouth. All right. So you would let them answer as much as or as little as they wanted to in terms of open-ended questions. Okay. If you're going to use a survey like that one I showed you, make sure you plan your questions really carefully. Make sure that you only ask those questions that you can't get the answer to somewhere else. If you can get answers to your questions from the website or from the other members, don't put them in a survey, okay? Only use questions that you have planned very carefully. Use all 3 kinds of questions to get a general overall, sense of the audience, because some people may answer the fixed alternative questions, but they may not answer the open-ended questions. And so you want to give a variety. Some people will only answer open-ended questions. So you want to give them a variety and be as brief as possible. Don't, like I said, don't ask questions that you can get answers to any other way. So you send out a survey because you want to get to know your audience, and you've gotten the information back, and you're looking at it, you're looking at the audience, getting to know the audience. What do you then do with that information now that you've done all this work?
Kind of cater to them.
You cater to them. It's a good way of putting it. Because you're staying audience centered, remember, you start to develop your topic. You start brainstorming your topic based on what they've told you, okay? And so in this way, you can sort of assess how the audience is likely to respond to a topic. And then if you think that they have interest in a topic, then you might go with that. But say you were thinking about a certain topic and you get your analysis back, and there in big bold letters under topics to not discuss is your topic that you thought you were going to do. Well, that's really good that you found that out before you went and did it, right? Okay. So audience analysis helps you to, give the audience what they want, give them what they're asking for, and you can adjust your speech to make it clear for that particular audience. Say you find out you're giving us a speech on computer programming, and you have a general audience. There's not a lot of computer programmers in the audience. What are you going to have to do?
Like break it down from the beginning on how to do it.
Yes, you're going to have to be real simple in how you explain it to a lot of people. You can't use the jargon. You can't use all that computer programming language. So you're going to have to be more clear about what you're talking about. Now, if you have a whole room full of computer programmers and your speech is on computer programming, then you can use certain kinds of language, right? So it's good to get to know the audience so you know what to do and what not to do. Now, during the speech, as you gain experience, as you get better at doing this, the more you do this, the more you will be able to adapt your speech during the presentation. Say you're getting some really confused looks on people's faces. What might you do to adapt your speech on the fly, so to speak, like right then and there?
More clear.
You could give more examples and make it more clear. You could slow down, go over the point again instead of just, keep trucking on.
Are there any questions?
Yeah, you can pose, are there any questions? And let people ask questions and get clarification of the point before you move on to the next one. If you see that everybody's nodding their head and everybody's kind of with you, then you can just keep going. You know that you can go on to the next point and everybody is with you. Everybody's on the same page. Okay. So we want to watch for feedback and respond appropriately. And as the more you do this, the more you get used to doing that. The more you find that you can respond to that feedback pretty quickly in the middle of your presentation. So it gets easier the more experience you have. Okay. All righty. So that was a really quick chapter 6. Before we move on to chapter 5, I want you to get some practice in figuring out target audiences, okay? And you need to get in groups of at least 3 or 4 for this because I don't have enough magazines for everybody. I only have enough for a few groups. So get into groups. What you're going to do is I'm going to give you a magazine. You are going to select an advertisement, not an article, but an advertisement from the magazine. It could even be the back cover if you wanted it. And you're going to look at that and decide who is the target audience. Okay, who is the target audience? Are they male? Are they female? What kind of age might they be? And does the advertising work? Okay, are you persuaded to use the product or service? Okay. All right. So you can pick any ad. It doesn't matter. I'm going to do a group together.
You stick the sci-fi home. They are talking women.
Big groups, little groups. Okay.
And how it is right. Oh, wait. Okay. So what did she see?
The target audience, and tell me about that target audience. What kind of people are they?
If you know anything that says lose weight, lose so many pounds, I don't care if you're 5 pounds over, you're gonna look at it.
You don't look at it, you know.
Too skinny.
So if that's the case, we live in that are underweight